I helped prove that there was a black hole at the center of the galaxy. So I have 2 Nature publications on basically looking for supermassive black holes, which was my initial background. And then I worked with Bruno Latour at l'École nationale des ponts et chaussées in France, doing social network analysis. So doing basically active network theory. Who's familiar with his Bruno Latour's work? Good stuff. So I'm not speaking. So I'm not going to talk about my mandate here today is a bit to be about like the opportunity and coming in from the business aspect and what kind of problems that we need you people to solve in real jobs right now. I'm happy to talk about my own work, my academic work, and what Nexalogy does. I'm the CEO of Nexalogy. We're a very quickly growing startup in Montreal. We've won tons of awards. We're the 5th most innovative company in Canada, and at the Toronto Stock Exchange. And our technology, we basically have 3 patent pendings right now on very advanced social network analysis techniques that I developed when I was working with Bruno Latour, which we used to apply to trying to predict scientific collaborations, and we basically took what people do on scientific papers and applied it to how people interact on the web. Now, I'm going to be talking to you today about the opportunity that lies outside of academia for almost everybody here. And I really liked Professor, who was the previous speaker? Lapam's talk, because I'm going to talk a lot about some of the issues that are hitting right now, how NLP is being used. You might know that there's a company called Nexalogy, which basically Nexalogy is an NLP supplier. They supply 70% of all the NLP on all the social media monitoring tools on the web. And there's a company right now called Symantria in Montreal that does an NLP API. Who knows about Symantria? I'm going to do a lot of hand raising. Okay. So you may want to look that up because they do entity extraction in 6 languages, sentiment analysis, which is, very controversial. So I'm going to talk about what we call the social data. The clicker seems to be.
Oh, you just asked for a pointer. I didn't plug in the dongle for.
Oh, okay, thank you. Where's the dongle go? There you go. There you go. Oof.
Yeah. Just say, drop it.
You want to come and do it?
No.
Okay.
No. Pretend it never happened.
Good. So, right now, the big data is extremely hyped. And we're in the period right now, literally, where the amount of social data that's being generated by people is doubling every 1.5 years. Even at this point, we're not sure about that. There's a professor called, he's a physicist, by the way, called Andreas Reinhold at Stanford University, who's coined the term social data revolution, who's basically trying to measure this entire thing. You might also know him because he basically coined the term data scientist because he was a head scientist for Amazon. So he's a physicist, he's a statistical physicist on top of that. My background is in quantum mechanics and particle physics, but statistics is a small thing we learn while we do quantum mechanics, and we don't even take a course in it, we just kind of figure it out. So he's a statistical mechanics guy, and he basically made the NLP-based engine at Amazon. So a lot of this is, you can look him up himself, or you can write to me. My Twitter address is right on the bottom. And we're actively growing and recruiting, so if you guys want jobs, I'm happy to talk to you afterwards as well. So it's basically been divided into 3 parts: the explosion, the ugly part, and the opportunity for all of you in the room. 2009 is a very important year in the history of humanity, but nobody knows about it. What do you want to know what happened? Does anybody want to venture a guess of what happened in 2009? What? Sorry? Twitter launch was 2008, but close. It's close to that. We produced more social data in 2009 than we had in previous recorded humanity. Okay, social data is everything here. It's not social media data. It's an email. It's data produced by a human. That's it. But it has to be written by the human. It can't be something that we call exhaust data now, which when you go for run tracker, what we call exhaust data might take this ratio and blow it out of the water. Because if you have a fuel band that starts measuring your diabetes sugar from your sweat, that amount of data will probably go up by a factor of 10. So when we talk about like the opportunity of big data, the first part of the opportunity is the sheer explosion that social media has brought. And there's all the work done by oh my God, I forgot his name, at Notre Dame, another physicist, but measuring the degrees of separation that was done at Harvard. With social media, with the web, we went from 6 to 5 degrees of separation between everybody on Earth. With social media, we're at 4.3 now. Okay? Barabosi. Just to give you an idea, this is actually almost a year old now. So 2 years ago, every 48 hours, every minute, we were uploading 48 hours every minute of video data to YouTube. Every minute, there was 320 new accounts created on Twitter. Every minute. 98,000 tweets appear every minute. That was 2 years ago. 168 million emails. So emails are a form of social data. Diplomatic cables are a form of social data. Okay? This is all included in what we call social data. Tumblr, which has since been acquired, was generating a measly 20,000 Tumblr posts per minute. And then look at Flickr, and I wanted you to play a special look at Flickr. This is before Instagram. Flickr was generating 6,600 uploads a minute. And what we can't even measure now, because we all know Technorati is no longer functioning. We all know that Google Blogs shut down the blogs, because Google can't even measure the amount of blogs that's being generated. Neither can Technorati. The last count of blogs were in the billions, because right now, 20% of all new websites being created are blogs. So even Google can't measure this. So let's just say this is not today. This is already 10 months old. You see in the span of a year, we went from 48 hours to 100 hours uploaded to YouTube every minute. And this is stuff, I go to San Francisco quite often, so all this stuff I verify personally, either on their websites or with like the vice president of Facebook that I met and this kind of stuff. We don't even know how many new accounts are being created on Twitter. And I'll tell you why in the second part of the talk. But the number of tweets has exploded. It's more than a 200% growth in less than a year. In emails, people think email is dead. No way. And the email problem is something that NLP could really help everybody else with. And nobody's cracked that nut. So if you want to make $1 billion company right here in Montreal, this would be a great way to start. Okay. And Tumblr went up by basically a third. But look, Flickr is dying. Flickr went down by a factor of 6. So this is not a heterogeneous just expansion. Okay? This is a very complicated expansion and retraction in some places. To give you an idea of just say the first expansion though, if I were to generate, and this basically as a physicist looking at, and this is why social data analytics is perfect for physicists, because we don't really care about people. We don't care about the subjects either. You're just metrics and numbers we crunch. So we treat people like large amount of atoms and everything kind of works out. And the physics to do social media analysis is about 80 years old. Okay, so the physics of how you brew coffee is the same physics of how people interact on the web. And it's really old physics, so it's not something that's cutting edge for most physicists to analyze. And basically what we do at Nexalogy is that we don't have any ontologies. We have a huge, big data, 1 terabyte cloud where we basically crunch correlation matrices for everything in any language, any symbol. So the way we look at stuff from a physicist point of view is that we often look at the metadata and we don't even care about the subject matter. So from a physicist point of view, I'm looking at this and I'm saying, okay, I have an exponential growth with a doubling factor about once every 1.5 years, roughly. I think it might be a bit faster now. What does that mean for normal people? It means that if I have a certain amount of data today, that in 5 years I'll have a factor of 10 times more data. In 10 years I'll have a factor of 100 times more data. And if things are like right now, in 20 years I'll have 20,000 times, I'll have 10,000 times more social data than I have today. I can bet you one thing. In 20 years from now, there'll be one type of company. There'll be the type of company that knew how to profit from this, and the other types of companies will have been acquired by the ones who knew how to do this. That's it. There is no other type of company in 20 years from now. I don't care if you do mining. I don't care if you do aeronautics. If you don't capitalize on the social data, the people who will acquire you. And they use my software to do this kind of stuff. So I have a social data analytics API that integrates into other tools. So, and that's why really my goal is to build a $1 billion company right here in Montreal. And we're well on our way to doing that. So in 20 years from now, this is what's, if you think this is complicated, you're all people working on PhDs. A VP marketing who has like a political science degree and a VP who doesn't even know what a weighted mean is, he has no idea what's going on right now. And he's scared shitless. And what's happening right now is that CMOs are going, 20% of your media spend has to be in social media. I don't care what you do. I know, I can't tell you for which company, a worldwide company, the Canadian CMO was told, spend 20% of social next year. And he was selling women's clothing. Didn't know how to do in social, lost his job. 6 months later, all of Canada's closed down. Okay? Because analyzing something that has this granularity, where everyone is a source of media, as opposed to just paying the Journal de Montréal, La Presse, the Gazette a bunch of money, and you have 3 suppliers and that's it. Now you have in Quebec 500,000 people who are a source of media, and you have to reach out to them individually and classify them. This is the problem that's being faced. So while there's this massive, massive expansion, so this is me talking personally to the vice president of Facebook. They have a vice president now called customer retention. Why? Because Facebook in Canada lost 1.5 million users net. 6 million users in the US. Those are people closing their Facebook accounts. They're going to Tumblr. What you might not know is that for people under 25, Tumblr has surpassed usage for Facebook by a long shot. Mostly because Facebook had a really crappy iPhone app. The other thing you need to understand is that this is a Yahoo study with Cornell, is that when you look at the amount of content that is shared on Twitter, 50% of all the content that is shared on Twitter is produced by 0.05% of the people on Twitter. Okay, do you guys know what a Pareto distribution is? This makes a Pareto distribution look, this is a very, very steep exponential. This is actually steeper than mainstream media. Right? So much for all the democratic, everybody shares shit on Twitter. It's complete bullshit. When you look at it, it's actually way more steep than what we look in traditional media. Okay? 50% of everything that you shared is done by 0.05% of the people on Twitter. So we like to think of a natural explosion and a nice expansion of social data, but this is what I used to do, which is really complicated. Like, heliosismology. Has anybody looked at this? This is like basically treating the sun as a massive water drop and doing spherical harmonics on the different layers of the sun. This is how we predict sunspots. Right there, this is the MySpace solar flare. Okay, it lasted 1 year and it's gone. This is the black dot of Flickr that's imploding right now. When you want to understand the expansion of social media, it is super complex and it more resembles heliosismology than it does a steady expansion. Because there's implosions, there's explosions, all at the same time. It's a complete mess. Nobody knows what the fuck's happening. One of the reasons why is because all these different forms of media, and this is also why all these companies are going bankrupt. Right now. Who knows a website called Newspaper Death Watch? Type it in Google right now. It measures the amount of newspapers that shut down every day in the US. La Presse is going to be a digital-only platform in less than a year. At least they're planning for the future, right? But the problem is that all these different forms of medias, like a camera, who has a camera now? Not even a digital camera, like maybe 2% of the people in this room. Everybody uses their phone as a camera. Like Polaroid is gone. Kodak doesn't even exist as a company barely. And they were a $1 billion company not 5 years ago. Why? Well, guess what? A photo, which used to be non-social data, is now social data. Because when you post a photo, I have your tag, I have your name, I have your Twitter ID, and I know where you posted it. If you have the bad luck of leaving your Twitter geolocation on, I know where you are to 3 feet. Books. Same thing, another industry that's completely in decline. Wattpad, a company in Toronto, just scored $50 million in venture, is destroying books. Who knows about Wattpad? Go check them out. It's like, basically, it's going to totally disrupt book publishing. Vinyl, I don't even talk about vinyl. We could talk polling, right? A form of polling, that's social data. I phone you, I know who you are, I know your gender, I know where you live, and I ask you questions. That's being disrupted. You can take polling data and crank it into social data as well. Newspapers, forget about it. Radio, again, radio now is a form of something on the web. TV is on the web. You view it through Netflix. Guess what? That's why Netflix can figure out what you want and how to make good TV shows now. Because they've analyzed your viewing habits on Netflix down to the millisecond. I know this also because I know one of the VPs at Netflix. By the way, Netflix gave a $1 million prize to a company, and a company in Montreal finished second. Who knows about Datacratic? Joshua Bengo's lab. Yeah. So some of the students from Joshua Bengo's lab started a company called Datacratic, which almost won the Netflix prize. There's a lot of good stuff happening in Montreal. So all these different forms of media are now digital. And they're now social digital. Meaning that your information, who you are, is tagged to the content. So all these different things now, it's all moving to an iPad. Or a TV screen or a computer screen. But all these different forms of media, like nobody buys a transistor radio. Who still has a transistor radio at home? I do. It's in my shower. It's the only thing that doesn't get wet. Okay? Or a TV that has a magnetic induction coil on the back. We're all doing digital TV. When it's moving day, nobody even picks up these huge screen TVs anymore. They're useless. Everybody wants a flat screen digital TV. So the problem is that nobody knows how to analyze all this social data. Who knows Gartner? Okay, so this is a Gartner study on big data. This is going to blow you away. Social data analytics in 2011 was a $76 million business. I had 1 million of that 76 million. Or about $500,000. In 2016, it's going to be a $4.4 billion business. You want to be in this industry? It's a 5,600% growth rate industry. When I'm talking about the explosion in data and the companies that either are going to perish or master this, the companies are starting to understand that they need to master this. And if you want to have a job, this is where you should go. So if you know Gartner, you know the Gartner hype curve. Who's seen this hype curve before? Okay, just so the people, about only a quarter of the people, so I'll explain it. All technologies, when they're released, when they're commercialized, go through this curve. Basically, when nobody knows about the technology, it's at the base here, it's the innovation trigger. It means that people in universities or people like me are coming out of universities and going, I think I can make this into a product. That's the trigger. The peak of inflated expectations is exactly that. It's when everybody's like, you're reading in Forbes and it goes, wow, this is going to change the world. Forbes doesn't have an idea. Forbes is just trying to sell papers, and everybody's going to try and say this can solve everything. So anything that's at the peak here is basically overhyped. This is why it's called the hype curve. Inevitably, what happens is that corporations throw billions of dollars at whatever is at the peak, and then they implement it, and it doesn't work, and they lose billions of dollars. And people go, oh, that sucks. And look at this. Text analytics, NLP, is in the worst sucky place right now in all of big data. Because people invested massively in sentiment analysis. This is going to revolutionize. I'll just say yes or no. The computer will say yes or no. I'll find all my fans on Facebook who like my shit, and I'll sell them more shit. Well, you know what? Sentiment analysis sucks. It barely works 50% of the time. And text analytics right now is in the bottom of the trough of disillusionment. Okay? And so from here to here is about 5 years, and the big companies, like the billion-dollar companies, start adopting these technologies about 5 years after they come out. So this is when IBM starts to buy people. IBM doesn't want to invest in all this shit. They're like, fight it out, guys. Go bankrupt, take all the risks, and when we have a $100 million business, we'll acquire you for 10 times revenues. Because they will lose more money trying to do the innovation than just acquiring. Right? But look at some of the other things here. Like my company, Social Analytics, is just like diving. Okay? That's what we do. And we're like plummeting towards a trough of disillusionment. Well, actually, I'm not. But the great thing is that a lot of people who tried analytics engines are really displeased. Right? Fundamentally, so all of big data, and it's hard to measure all the different aspects of big data, but officially as of 2013, big data is in a trough of disillusionment, which is really funny because in Canada, people are just starting to talk about it. Right? So it's going. So officially, big data is going through the trough of disillusionment, and I'm going to talk about that in the third part of the talk, as to why, okay, and it's a bit of a crisis, and it's also why you guys, if you want, you have a good job waiting for you. This is the typical type of stuff that drives up the hype curve, right? Forbes, all the rich CEOs are sitting on their plans, are like, oh my God, what's the next thing I should do in my company? Like, I want a bigger bonus. Big data, okay, I gotta hire a big data guy, let's go. Literally, there are no physicists left in San Francisco. Zero. Every physicist in every university 100 miles around San Francisco has been hired. I know that because even come to Montreal, I'll hire them now. Two of my employees were poached by Google. So right now, is data the new oil? So I'm going to talk a little bit about the opportunity first. The explosion. We're still in the explosion part before I get down to the, not fun part. So, yeah, it is a lot like oil. I won't say it is oil, but it's a lot like oil, okay? It's big, and especially social data, because it's social data that's a big driver behind a lot of the explosion in the amount of data. Right? We're going farther and farther everywhere to get oil. The days where you just used to like pluck a pipe of the ground and like make money is gone. Okay, right now we're like tar sand era, really hard to extract oil, where I have to burn 2 barrels of oil to get 3 barrels and use 5 barrels of water. That's kind of like where we are in the oil peak right now. Social data used to be very hard to extract. Okay? I'm an anarchist. I closed down the Quebec government for a day when I was doing my PhD. Okay? And I did my PhD in a US Air Force base. It's Sandia National Labs. Anybody know what Sandia is? Yeah. So if you know what Sandia is, like I used to have machine guns pointed at me all the time, like, no, I'm not joking. It's really serious shit. They have the biggest stockpile of nuclear weapons in the world. So you don't let guys like me on there normally. And they used to extract my data. But it cost the RCMP $4,000, $5,000 a year to build their records of me. When I give a demo, there was an RCMP officer filming me from across the street. That costs a lot of money. Okay? I agreed to lab my phone stop. I wrote the thing, please stop my phone, monitor my emails to work on this US Air Force base. That costs a lot of money. It has to be a human who listens to that shit. So my RCMP record probably cost $10,000 to $20,000 to build. Well, guess what? Facebook has better data on me, and I gave it for free. The information that we give to Facebook 5 to 10 years ago in East Germany, people were tortured for. Okay? Who are your family? What's your religion? What are your political persuasions? In Israel, people are tortured for this right now. And we're giving it right now for free to Facebook. So the data acquisition problem has been solved by tricking you to give your data for free on Facebook, Tumblr, everything. If the product is for free, what's the next sentence? You're the fucking product. Okay? So the second thing are people like DataSift and the other people, and once you get that data, I have to truck it around and store it. The Amazon costs are out of control. Right? So the second value add in social data is storing it and then bringing it to market. Just like, again, same thing here. This is why Amazon is worth so much money. Then there's actually, if I just throw you the fire hose, the Twitter fire hose, if I throw those 320,000 tweets a minute, where are you going to store them? That'll fill up your hard drive in like half a day. Not even, probably, you'd have to swap hard drives every hour. So even if I give you all the data and I deliver it to your house, what are you going to do with it? It's like having unrefined oil. So you live in the plateau, I have a barrel of oil on the TSX. I deliver that barrel of oil to your house. What are you going to do with all that oil? On the plateau or in the Nutrimo? You know, probably the barrel is more useful than the actual crude. Again, very, very similar. Okay? And you guys are going to be working in the refineries. This is why refining oil makes a lot of money. Well, refining social data will make a lot of money. Because crude, raw social data is useful to nobody. Okay, the only people it's useful for is for the refiners. All these things are oil. Okay, who likes Twinkies? Nobody. Good. Well, you like Twinkies. If you like a Twinkie, do you think you're eating milk? A Twinkie has never come 10 miles close to a cow. Okay? Twinkies are made from Coffee Mate, which is an edible oil product which resembles milk. And then we use that edible product, we mix it with sugar, and we make a Twinkie, and that's why Twinkies never go bad. Because they're actually eating oil. Okay? If you wear cheap clothing, you're actually mostly wearing oil. Now, there's a value add, though, at each step. So if I just sell you raw oil, it's not very useful. But here, this, Vaseline, it was an oil byproduct. It was clogging up the pipes. It was edible, so hey, let's sell it. We'll call it petroleum jelly. The Vaseline is an edible oil product. Okay? So all these different things are different levels of adding human design and other substances. A car, it runs on oil, but it's also made up of a lot of plastic and a lot of human design. So the value add of social data products is the same structure as the value add of oil products. That's why data is like oil. It's not oil. So, the ugly. Right? Why is it that not everybody is making money on social data? Well, mostly because it's complete crap. Social data now, because social media has become such a success, a media is only a media when you can pass advertising through that form of information. Right? If I can't pass advertising through it, it's not really a media. So social media has matured. But the cost of that maturation is ads that you get to see on Facebook now. Who remembers when Facebook had no ads? Yeah, very few of us. Right? But now I get these stupid ads all the time. And you grow to ignore them. But now the ads are actually being pushed at you in your feed. And we're becoming less and less sensitive to the ads. So, but the big problem now, this is from an IBM thing, is that the big data used to be 3 V's. It used to be velocity. We always had big data. When I was 24, I worked at CERN. Okay, that's my first 2 papers I published at CERN trying to find supersymmetry in particle acceleration. So we accelerate particles close to the speed of light, smash them together, look for patterns, try and see if they're gluinos. I wrote my first website when I was 24. Because the all of the web used to be hosted on one Next computer at CERN. Did you know that? That's, if next time if people say, well, why should we fund particle physics? We go, well, we gave you the web. Just, side product. So back then, we could do big data. I used to do a terabyte of data analysis. It took me a week. I programmed the computers. I had a little robot that would pick up the tapes. Who's ever worked with that? Yeah, you're Russian? Okay, yeah. So I used to have a little robot that used to go and pick up tapes and put them into a little tape recorder and read them. That's, people laugh at that today. That was a terabyte of data that I used to analyze. It took me a week. If you make a mistake, you're fucked. You basically have to wait another week. So that kind of data today, so to give you an idea, from the age of 24 to 31, the reasons why physicists are the big data people is we help develop the techniques for big data. So at CERN, people work for free on this. Then we open source it. But by the time I was 31, I was analyzing a 1 terabyte tape at a telescope in Namibia. It cost us so much money to put the data back in Paris that we used to fly it back by plane. It was cheaper than the bandwidth. That's when you're dealing with big data. When eBay had to move the data center, when it's cheaper for you to just load a truck up with a ton of tapes and drive them to Utah, that's when you're doing big data. Okay? When the Excel spreadsheet limit of 400,000 is reached, you're in big data land. If you're still working, and you can maybe do some of these things to MySQL. Well, the problem is now the big data used to be 3 V's: velocity, variety, and sheer volume. You need to have all 3. Now big data includes a 4th V. It's called veracity, and one of the reasons it's that is because most of the data is shit. Okay, that's why the refineries are going to be really needed. Because you can have the best NLP engine in the world. I feed you 90% spam. You're going to crank out crap. Yep. No problem. So what makes data veracity complicated? Well, there's a lot of ways that data cannot be right. Data can just be wrong. It can be saying lies. So that's a form of veracity. It could be errors, right? In the text. So I'm saying the right thing, but there's an error margin of 50% on my data. That's also wrong data. Reliability, is it there all the time? A lot of the data, for instance, even on Google, which stores blogs, Google and basically people like JCPenney are fighting nonstop wars. Where JCPenney creates hundreds of thousands of false blogs. We call them content farms. Who knows about content farms? Right? And JCPenney was basically kicked off of Google in 2010 because it was paying people in India to create fake blogs to point artificially to JCPenney. And Google, there's this fight between Google, Facebook, and I'll show you an example of that. So here's a JCPenney example. There are clearly hundreds of thousands of blogs artificially pointing to JCPenney. So you would think that, oh wow, this person really likes red dresses. Not false. And Google was fooled by this for years and still is. And Google mostly does this by outsourcing it by hand. You know when you have a report of spam? That's how Google is doing it. This is, right now, this is a study by the University of Rome, I think. 46% of the followers of the Fortune 500 brands are robots. You know when? So this is the work that we do. We do automatic text analysis on Twitter, on other social data sources. When Jack Layton trended worldwide in the last debate when he was still alive, he only trended in Canada. Then Twitter bots all over the world look at what's trending per region and create fake sentences using NLP. They do entity extraction. They recognize Jack Layton as a man's name. And they go, Jack Layton, my boyfriend, loves, and they sell you whatever, penis enlargement shit or Viagra. But they do entity extraction on the name. And then put a Twitter robot to tweet on that. And so it'll take things that are trending in Canada and like 10,000 Twitter robots around the world start tweeting automatically. Did you guys, this is where we're at here. And you know, 10,000 followers? I will add 20,000 followers by your profile link to larger your Twitter followers. For $5. It's a site called, it's an Israeli site called Fiverr. You pay $5 American and people do stupid shit for you. Like, they'll add 20,000 followers to your account. By the way, politicians do this all the time. Okay. I worked with the people in New York.
Yeah, but that's like fake news, right?
Yeah. So, there's a very good company in New York called Peak Analytics that does this kind of work. Okay. And this is on the front page of Mashable. 92% of Newt Gingrich's followers were people who he probably bought on Fiverr. It probably only cost him like $200. Who knows about disappearing Romney? This is an active website. Go see it now. This is Facebook. Some poor people at Facebook, probably in India, are hand-removing fake Romney followers. It's called Disappearing Romney. Okay? So you go to the website, you log in, and there's like, this is the historical count. But then they give you, since you logged in, this is how many people have unliked Mike Romney. But this is a colossal problem. You can have the best NLP in the world. You have this, it'll be useless. Okay, because you don't know what's a bot, and bots are getting so good because of NLP, it's getting really hard to tell the bots from the people. So this is really disparaging. In 2013, this is another academic study. First 6 months of 2013, the amount of spam on the web increased by on social media, basically Facebook and Twitter, increased by 355% in the first 2 quarters. So this is the problem here. So these are people who are starting to fix this problem. I work with these people. You see, that's my company over here. And these are the other partners. And there are other companies trying to solve this. Recently FlipTop was sued by Twitter, by Facebook, so I'm not sure if they're still around. And then sales says they're going to do it, but you see, this is 2012. It's still not out. So like you were saying earlier, Google's working on shit, so Salesforce, but these are problems that they can't solve, in all honesty. And so, but there's a crisis. And this is a super cliche thing, I know. Right? But it's a cliche because it totally applies to reality, which is this case. And this is why everybody in this room has a huge opportunity. Finish your PhDs, or don't even finish your PhDs and go work for people like me right away. Okay? Because... Sorry?
So don't hold back. Tell us what you really think.
Oh, there are tons of people like me who will hire you at $120 a year. So in San Francisco, that's a going rate. Uh-oh, we have some video problems here. Okay, so... Oh, that sucks. Well, we'll have to see this in blue then. So there's a crisis. Chinese word for crisis is the same thing as a Chinese word for opportunity. That's the one. Got it. And so I'm going to come back here. There's definitely a crisis, okay? Text analytics, social analytics, and now monitoring, which is no analytics, which is really ridiculous. Like monitoring software is now, because the software, the amount of data has gone up by a factor of 100. Radian 6 was fine when you had 30 mentions a day, but now you're going to have 3,000 mentions a day. And you either have a row of 24 humans reading and analyzing Radian 6 stuff all the time, or you need better solutions like mine. So McKinsey predicted, and this is the opportunity here, that by 2018, there'll be 4 million big data related jobs in the US economy. We will be missing 1.5 million people who understand even the basic precepts of big data, let alone programmers. Okay, there is a screaming need in the next 4 years. And it's going to be something that's, and the biggest reason, and like it's not just me, I would say the biggest reason why we're here, okay, it has nothing to do with bandwidth, has nothing to do with processing speed, has nothing to do with storage capacity. Those things are pretty well solved. This has to do with people. Because you need smart people who know a little bit about data and a little bit about research and a little bit about how people interact on the web to be able to condition what goes into an NLP engine, what goes into a Hadoop cluster. Most of the time, you don't even need big data. Okay, you can it's a very American way to solve problems. So I used to work at CERN. I worked with a lot of Russians. I have a lot of I admire those guys. If you look at the Russian book of integrals, it's this thick. Because they don't use computers all the time to solve their problems. They actually look up an integral and solve it analytically. And I remember, there's this joke about the Russians about the space program where the Americans were like having space pens, because the pen works with gravity. There's no gravity in space, so they develop tiny micro pumps that create the same amount of weight for the pen, for the ink, so that when they write, ink comes out. And when they had the first Mir, U.S. American working on the Mir space station, the Americans said, "How did you solve the space pen problem?" And the Russians responded with, "We use pencils." We use pencil. Most useless thing in English language is definite article. So it's kind of like, so yeah, you use pencils. And this is a lot of the stuff around big data is you don't need big data often. You get a smart Russian or a smart Quebecois guy or just somebody who goes, "Oh, actually, did you think of this?" And there are a lot of ways to do this, but there are not enough people in the U.S. economy right now to do that. And we're going to be importing them from all over the world. So why is that? Because basically for the first time in recorded human history, we can measure zeitgeist. This is what I find interesting. So my job as an astrophysicist is to be, what I wanted to do and what I actually did was be the first human to see new things. I was the first human to see the black hole at the center of a galaxy. That's where I wanted to be. That's what I did. That's why I published in Nature. Now I'm going to be the first human to understand real time what's happening. Last election, we basically won the election. Okay? We work with Obama, when I say we, I'm talking about Obama people, but also people like me, can analyze in real time how people are feeling state by state, city by city, gender by gender, everything, and we can condition. We can better understand people. We can also better spy on them, right, than we can ever done. And the idea of measuring zeitgeist, it was always something that in its very word was like spirit. People thought it was something that we could not understand. For the first time in history, we're able to measure this. Okay? If I start emitting data and talk, I put this in for you because you're going to be talking about memes, okay, is that people can start emitting, I measure biorhythms in Montreal. Because I know when people are hungry every hour of the day. That's true. I can measure health problems in Montreal, and I've done that. Where I look at people who complain about breathing on Twitter. I mean, it's right now the health agencies have to look at hospital entrances a year later. That's how they're compiling the air quality metrics. Well, I can do it for real time. I know everybody in Montreal is complaining about breathing issues. And guess what it's correlated to? What would you think? Smoking? Nope. Huh?
Temperature and air quality.
Well, it's called the temperature because when the temperature gets cold, people start their wood ovens. And wood stoves put more pollutants on the street than all the cars in Montreal. The pizza ovens, the bagel ovens put more pollutants on the street than cars you can imagine. And breathing problems are linked to cold, really cold, clear days where everybody starts having fires. So we can start, and these are memes. Nobody's saying, there's not a hashtag that says breathing problem Montreal. There's no hashtag for that. There's nobody organizing this discussion. This is not a community of people. This is using light NLP. We're able to look at people who have different breathing-related issues and correlate that in time. That's measuring zeitgeist. That's measuring memes in real time. Memes are proto-ideas. They're not fucking cats dancing on pianos on YouTube. Okay. And so you can measure this politically, health-wise. Sadly, The reason measuring this now is to sell you more ads. But we could also use it to better service social policies for you. We could also use it to improve health. I'm going to skip all this stuff and go straight to here. So people we need to do this. We need people like me who just know data and know how to crunch massive amounts of data. Let's assume that problem's solved. Okay, let's assume that the technology problem of big data is solved. Who do we need after that? We need people who, and this is a social big data problem, we need people who have basic understandings of research and statistical methods, but also you need to understand people because the data is about people. So anthropologists, sociologists, learn how to program. Because tomorrow, all the people like me who are working like to make platforms for people to do social data analytics, that problem is going to be solved in about 2 years. That's it.